guys, here's an improv prompt. Imagine you come back to your dorm room one day and see your roommate walking around with a cactus up their bottom. It's very painful, and he's trying really hard to get every single out of his butt. All right.
I took a cactus on my bottom without a second thought. And that is a good improv. That is also the epitome of one of the ground rules in rehearsal room. Take a flying fuck at a rolling donut.
So that was a creative way of saying, in the rehearsal room, please try and fail, and you can fail gloriously.
At least you tried.
Because the good stuff never comes out until you actually
do it. Just do it.
And that's a good lesson for our life in general, because whatever life throws at you, you need to respond by taking actions.
Well, the lack of action is probably the most frustrating response, because that basically means nothing is done. What is probably worse is when you realize this lack of action is due to mistakes. You are late to the session, so you can't do much, or you are irresponsible and was not focused when we need your contribution, your action.
So here comes the second set of ground rules, punctuality and presence. We know everyone has a lot going on in their life, but if then I start to show up to rehearsals late,
then why don't you set an alarm? You got a phone.
Or if I manage to be punctual, but all I can think about in the rehearsal room is the essay I've been procrastinating to write.
Then why don't you do it? Just do it.
Or the phone call that I don't want to make.
Answer it and be focused.
Or the mess in my dorm that I don't want to clean up.
Clean up your life.
All of these thoughts don't help with my rehearsals at all. So I try very hard to leave them at the rehearsal room door, or to take a step further, the door to any meeting or group sessions that I'll have. Our presence can be our greatest contribution to the group, and it is also a necessity. So all of this sounds pretty straightforward so far, at least we hope so. And now we're going to talk about another ground rule that it's so often easier said than done, to be non-judgmental.
So when I just did that improv, or right now, make this face. To some of you, I might look funny, but to some of you, I might just look stupid. Well, laughter is inevitable, but we need to be mindful that that was me doing a prompt. That is not me as a person. But it seems so easy for a lot of people to judge and define an individual because of the action they've conducted. But if that's the case, then shouldn't we be concerned about what we are doing all the time, whether or not it's foolish or it looks impressive? In that case, everybody sitting here should be concerned about how they are sitting, the way in which their hand is put in front of their chest, the way in which their left foot is put in front of their right foot, or the other way around, the way in which they are smiling and looking on stage. You get my idea. If we are self-conscious all the time, then how are you even able to enjoy this TED Talk? And how are you even able to take a step forward in life carefree?
So if that was you, just then, don't worry. Breathe. Take a moment. Acknowledge that you are self-conscious. And you don't need to judge yourself for that. Maybe a better way to phrase this rule is acknowledge before judging. The next time you or someone else takes whatever flying fuck at whatever rolling donut, acknowledge that attempt, but you don't need to judge anyone for that.
Though it might seem easy to say, oh, I'll take a flying fuck, but when I realize the world is looking at me, I just psychologically die on stage. There were one moment when I was having a rehearsal session. As I start acting, the acting coach started to look at me like this. And then he leaned forward. And then he started looking at his watch. And then he started frowning. All these sends a message to me because I'm an actor. I can read his body language. This is bad. And I immediately start panic. What have I done wrong? What's my next line? Should I do it this way instead of that way? Why didn't my rehearsal materialize? What's going on right here? His body language of judgment is like a snowball falling onto a glacier, and it becomes an avalanche of self-judgment. Within moments, my acting vanquished. And then within moments, I had an emotional breakdown on stage.
So in your case, when you were sharing a work in progress, the judgment from another person manifested in a nonverbal form. This is a lesson for us to be mindful of what our words and our body could communicate. Whether verbal or nonverbal, when such judgments accumulate over time, it can have a substantial impact on the confidence and sense of ownership of one's creative process. And in our context, the creative process of a young, budding theater artist.
And this also speaks about the intricacies in fostering a safe space, a place where everyone will feel free to experiment and also express their mind, so that, because in this case, they will be in a position of vulnerability to attacks, mockery, and judgment. After we have acknowledged the importance of being non-judgmental in a space, let's move on to the freedom of expression, which is integral in fostering a safe space for ideas to conceptualize and also for people to speak their mind.
Speaking of freedom of expression and balancing different voices, now working in drama lessons, I just found the dynamics of group work fascinating. It's extremely fascinating to see who is doing the most of the talking.
Man.
Well, not necessarily, but
a lot of times when I'm having creative ideas, I'm so excited to express them. I want to share my choices, my creative concept, and all that. My excitement, my energy, and my passion can fill in the entire room. And it speaks about how much I'm controlling over the creative process, but it does come at a cost. I silenced the entire room.
yeah, I would argue it is such a multifaceted problem. I've seen this happen very often in a lot of groups. Sometimes the energy does carry people away. I too am also very guilty of it. Factors that can contribute to such dominance in group work can be the position of being a teacher or a club leader, or gender, age, amount of experience, and so on. But as you said, everyone has a voice and we need to support each other. So as a group leader and now a teaching fellow, I have a few tips that can help everyone's voice be heard during group work. First of all, it's not any single person's job to fill the silence. Silence can be awkward, but also stimulating. Sometimes people just need a moment to pause, process, and formulate their thoughts. Wait and give everyone that time. Secondly, ask other people questions and learn about their perspectives, and then respond to their perspectives, follow up, build on their ideas before jumping onto a brand new one. Also, when interruptions and overlaps ultimately happen, remember to cue the person who didn't get their chance to talk. For example, if someone else didn't notice that they'd have talked over Richard, when they finish, I would just say, Richard wanted to say something. These strategies can be applied to various collaborative settings other than the sit and discuss situation. For example, a physical workshop where we devise and choreograph physical theater. In this case, before criticizing and editing each other's choreography, we really need to listen and observe what everyone is aiming for with their moves. Explore each other's moves, build on them, let them flow better. And now I'm conscious that I probably just dominated this whole section, but this is different because we two have agreed on it and this is a planned talk.
But really look at the issue. I do come to realize how much us men can dominate a conversation and make other people fearful of talking. Additionally, it does prompt me to reflect how my gender can play a role in making a space unsafe.
Now, Most men I've met are really nice and really not intimidating. But from my observation, men and boys at school could often get away with having more character in a group setting, of being more talkative, assertive, and provocative, sometimes sprinkled with some borderline offensive humor. And as we give more leeway to fool around, for them to fool around or be a character, maybe we lose sight of the balance of voices we need for everyone in the room. And to be honest, power dynamics, gender is just one example, goes far beyond voices or opinions. It is extremely serious when vulnerability is involved. In a rehearsal room, we're emotionally vulnerable. Physically, we give up our personal space for the sake of experimentation and embracing our characters. All of these can be very easily exploited.
Unfortunately, usually in a group rehearsal, especially with physical intimate scenes, it often can appear as a male actor constantly dictating the conversation, planning out all kinds of physical intimacies, sometimes just simply dictating it all, sometimes not even asking for scene partner's consent. And that is simply unacceptable. When I was rehearsing an extract from A View from the Bridge as a scene where Rodolfo was flirting with my scene partner, Catherine, who was here today, before our rehearsal started, I sat her down and I seriously told her there will be physical intimacies in our scene. And when we are trying them out, whenever you feel uncomfortable, please tell me on spot. And we can always figure out an alternative approach that can work. Additionally, during the rehearsal, whenever I'm about to have a physical contact with her, as small as putting my hand on her shoulder, as big as hugging her, before that, I will always tell her, I'm about to do this. How do you feel about it? Or do you feel comfortable about it? I understand to some people it may seem like overcomplicating or even unnecessary. But in my opinion, it is just one essential step I take to pay respect to another individual, and also simply being aware of the imbalanced power dynamics and being proactive, and also checking on others' feeling in order to mitigate it. And this to us seems like a more serious issue as we are more young aspiring actors. We have to take this issue seriously, and we have to mitigate this kind of imbalance.
Yeah, so you talked very thoughtfully about power associated with gender. Well, I can add to that with an example about power associated with seniority. Obviously, it seems a bit ridiculous for an 18-year-old to be talking about seniority. But I just want to remind us that at high school, seniority can come from something that seems frivolous, as frivolous as being 1 year older, or having been to one more drama class or summer program, and so on. And people might treat you as one of their best resources they have access to at the moment. So I've slowly learned that my opinions, comments, and responses may have come off far more superior and dictatorial than I intended them to be, and thus interfering other people's creative processes. So what I usually do with an actor in a sharing or coaching session is to discuss the text and their approach to acting it. There's a lot of brainstorming, experimenting, tweaking. And I noticed that some actors would feel pressured to follow what I suggest in a brainstorm, or pressured to give the right answer that aligned with my interpretation of the text. When they're only driven by this fear and pressure, I could sense that things didn't click. And if that goes on, it would slowly make the rehearsal room a very intimidating space. So now I just always remind myself to ask questions. How do you feel about what you did just now? Were you able to connect with the text? What's the character's tactic here? How would you physicalize it? It may seem like a ton of work for the actor, as it should, but most importantly, I need to respect their ownership and their power to make decisions for themselves, especially when they might assume that they need to give that up because I was in the room.
And so these are just two small steps other than being non-judgmental in a space. Can we foster a safe space? And it just comes down to be mindful of the power dynamics within human relations and being proactive to mitigate this power imbalance.
These small steps of awareness and action can lead to big changes on safety, creativity, and empowerment. Small steps that can go into our to-do lists. I know each of us can have overwhelming to-do lists, but we do hope you take a moment and think about fostering a safe space as a priority. What we can create is a space where people can take flying fucks in, where people enjoy making mistakes, and where people can learn. Learning about collaboration is just as important as learning about more tangible things in theater. And I would even argue the former is more important for us young people.
We learn all these lessons through various ways. For example, mistakes we've made, but also great teachers who are willing to teach these to us. And I'm very grateful of it.
Yeah, they should not be left out of the picture. So, and along the journey, I also learned to create a safe space for myself. I learned to take a break from all the self-judging and self-loathing. I learned to talk in a more friendly way to myself and to reassess when I am pressuring myself to act according to someone else's standards that might seem more valid or superior. I say, just let go. And why not take a flying fuck and a rolling donut?
And here comes my favorite conclusion. I need to be quick. In our daily life, people are taking numerous flying fucks and hundreds and thousands of donuts each day. It doesn't stop when we walk out of this room, and it doesn't stop when we walk out of the rehearsal room. So we do leave the question to you. How are you going to foster a safe space to encourage people to take the flying fucks? Thank you.